Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Maple Conservative Girl podcast. Today, I am talking about Danielle Smith, Alberta separation, Western alienation, and the complete panic happening inside the Liberal establishment right now. Because now Alberta wants to push back against Ottawa, and the media is acting like Canada is 5 minutes away from completely collapsing. Meanwhile, Mark Carney is trying to appeal to climate activists, pipelines, national unity, and his own Liberal MPs who are now fighting each other over Alberta energy. So today I'm breaking down what Danielle Smith is actually proposing, why the left is completely having a meltdown, and why Ottawa only seems to care about Alberta once political pressure starts rising. So if you like this episode, please subscribe and share with somebody who you think might benefit from listening to this, and let's get right into it. So the Liberals and the mainstream media are having a complete meltdown. Alberta separation is everywhere you look. It's top of mind for the left. It's all over the media. Everybody is talking about it, and they will not shut up about it. The Canadian political establishment is straight up panicking for something that they once thought was no big deal. Alberta's separatist movement is growing and growing big. Danielle Smith says Alberta will hold a referendum related to provincial sovereignty and separation, and suddenly the entire media establishment is acting like Confederation is collapsing tomorrow morning. CBC panels are screaming national unity crisis. The left says Alberta's conservatives are dangerous and basically anti-Canadian. Because while Danielle Smith is being attacked for dividing the country, Carney's own Liberal MPs are openly revolting against his Alberta energy agreement. The media is framing it like it's a terrible thing. Like there are tanks rolling into Edmonton and Alberta is declaring independence like right away. That is not what's happening, everybody. This is about alienation. This is about decades of Western frustration with Ottawa. This is about people feeling ignored economically and politically. Sometimes during an election, the Prime Minister is called by the CBC before Alberta even finishes voting. And it's also about the Liberals pretending over the last 11 years that these frustrations either aren't real or simply just don't matter. The political class keeps acting shocked every time Western anger resurfaces, calling them names, saying that they're far right, shaming them. But this didn't just come out of nowhere. This has been building for years. Pipeline battles, carbon taxes, equalization resentment, federal regulations, energy sector hostility. They've been pushing Alberta to this point, and now Danielle Smith is channeling that anger politically. Whether people agree with her or not, who cares? Let's be clear. Alberta separatists got the signatures that they needed to hold a referendum in October, and some activist judge shut it down. Now, that is the best way to fuel anger, fuel discussion that they probably did not want to cause, but they did. Danielle Smith says that she's appealing the decision by the judge, but she's also going around the system by saying that Alberta will hold a referendum related to provincial sovereignty, saying that the question will be, do you want there to be a referendum question in the future? And suddenly the entire media is having a complete hissy fit.
Now, for those Albertans who don't want a referendum at all, it's important to note that 700,000 Albertans signed one petition or another asking for a referendum on this issue. We cannot kick this can down the road. We need to get direction from all Albertans on this matter now, not 3 years from now. Now is the time for Albertans to decide whether we want to spend the time, expense, and effort pursuing separation or whether Albertans want to remain in Canada. My position is to stay. I believe Albertans should remain in Canada, and I would ask that all Albertans join me in voting to remain a province of Canada. But that doesn't mean that we accept the status quo from Ottawa. We will continue to work on undoing the last 10 years of damaging Trudeau NDP policies and fight for a stronger Alberta within a united Canada. And we'll find out what Albertans think on this matter on October the 19th. Albertans will decide, not politicians, not the courts, and certainly not the Ottawa pundits. Again, the choice is simple. It's either Option 1, vote to remain in Canada, put an end to this debate, and fight to make our province and country stronger and more unified. Or option 2, vote to commence the necessary, albeit lengthy, legal processes, appeals, and other steps needed to legally separate from Canada, including a binding referendum that complies with the Constitution. The choice is ours. You know where I stand on this question. I believe Canada is working better every day. And that it can work even better in the future if we keep fighting together to keep Alberta and Canada forever strong and free.
This is what actual democracy looks like. The media will have you believe that Danielle Smith is trying to separate Canada and that she's anti-Canadian and she's crazy, but she has been clear that she is a federalist. But democracy means listening to your constituents, the people that she works for, the people who voted for her. She works for Albertans, all Albertans, and the media is crapping all over her for even paying attention to these separatists like they're just a fringe minority, right? But she has to. It's a lot of people. And meanwhile, in Ottawa, Carney is trying to balance climate activists, urban liberal voters, Alberta energy interests, and national unity. And you can't have it both ways forever. Like, you cannot tell Alberta, we support your economy, while your own MPs are writing letters attacking pipeline cooperation. Like, at some point, the contradictions explode publicly. And that's what we're watching right now. That's what we're seeing. So let's start with the first thing that almost everybody in the media these days is either intentionally confusing or just being really biased about. Well, here I'll be biased towards conservatives. This is what Danielle Smith is actually doing.
I am announcing today that I will be requesting our government add an additional question to the October 19th referendum vote announced previously. The additional question will be, should Alberta remain a province of Canada? Or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada? Because this proposed referendum question does not directly trigger separation, but if successful, would ask Alberta's government to commence the legal process necessary to hold a binding referendum on the matter, the recent court ruling would not be applicable, and the referendum question I outlined could proceed. This question will also ensure the 700,000 signatories to both the Forever Canada petition and the Stay Free Alberta petition are respected, and the will of Albertans is heard. Kicking the can down the road only prolongs a very emotional and important debate, and muzzling the voices of hundreds of thousands of Albertans wanting to be heard is unjustifiable in a free and democratic society. It's time to have a vote, understand the will of Albertans on this subject, and move on. Now, obviously, Alberta's first ever provincial vote on our province's future in Canada is of monumental importance.
If you watch mainstream coverage right now, you'd think that Alberta is like one press conference away from leaving Canada. That is not what is happening. This is not an immediate separation vote. And that distinction really matters because they're not really talking about it. What's being discussed is effectively a referendum on whether Alberta should pursue steps towards a future binding referendum. This might actually be really smart of Danielle Smith because it's very different from saying, let's vote for Alberta to leave or not. And it kind of opens the door for people who don't actually want to leave Canada to kind of voice their frustration with the Liberal Party and how the government is basically alienating them, so they can vote yes for a referendum in the future just to send Ottawa a message and say, hey, we're not happy, and so we're gonna vote for this. But they're not actually committing to leaving Canada tomorrow. And honestly, a lot of the media coverage intentionally skips over all of this because panic gets ratings, right? They want you to believe that Danielle Smith is separating Canada, feeding into these far-right separatists, aka Canadians. You didn't take these Canadians seriously. You didn't listen to them. I mean, what did they expect? If you don't listen to Canadians, they're gonna revolt. Now, Danielle Smith's argument is pretty straightforward. She says Alberta has been ignored by Ottawa for years upon years by this Liberal government, and whether you agree with that or not, millions of Albertans clearly feel that way. Danielle Smith argues that the energy sector has been damaged by federal policies. She's right. The Liberals always try to appeal to Eastern Canada because they're net zero nutcases. Danielle Smith talks about overregulation, pipeline delays, carbon taxes, federal interference, and a lack of respect for Alberta jurisdiction. And that's basically her core political message. And Danielle Smith keeps saying that she wants Alberta to stay in Canada. And that part basically gets ignored from Liberals and from the mainstream media, who think she's like a wackadoodle giving any attention to these people. These far-right conservatives, aka the Albertans that she represents. She's repeatedly said that she believes Alberta should remain part of Canada, but she also says that Albertans need to be heard, because the more Ottawa dismisses this Alberta frustration, the stronger that these movements become. That's just the reality. And this is where I think that the Liberals fundamentally misunderstand what's happening. They keep acting like separatist sentiment just like magically appeared one day out of nowhere, and that these people are anti-Canadian. These grievances have been building for decades, and there is a huge double standard in Canada. I'm from Quebec, but I'm surrounded by Liberals and Bloc voters. But when Quebec threatens separation, it's treated like a serious cultural and constitutional issue. The political class bends over backwards to understand Quebec nationalism. But when Alberta complains, suddenly it's extremism. It's far right. It's MAGA. It's dangerous. Suddenly people are told to sit down and shut up and stop being so divisive. And people notice that contradiction. And when Quebec threatens separation, it's called cultural identity. Those poor French Quebecers, we need to value them and their language and cater to their needs, because their needs matter, because their language matters. They can have a referendum. There was one, I think it was in 1995, that basically got like 51% saying to stay. Like, I wouldn't even be Canadian today. Like, I was like 2 years old when this happened. But I guess it's a different story when Alberta does it, because Alberta's the one who is paying the bills here in Canada. The disconnect is fueling a lot of this anger. Now, personally, I think most Albertans want Canada to work. Most Canadians want, and conservatives want Canada to work. But they want a version of Canada where their economy and province are actually respected, and frankly, Ottawa should probably take that seriously instead of immediately jumping to moral panic every time Western frustration resurfaces. Like, they should be listening to their frustrations. Now, I want to show you how quickly the establishment media, the mainstream media, moved into full panic mode the second that this referendum conversation started.
Danielle Smith is about to be the first Federalist Premier in Canada to put a separatism question on a ballot and then campaign to stay, it would appear, is where this is going to go today. Well, what do you make of the dynamic we're seeing here with the Premier of Alberta?
Madness.
Okay.
Total madness. Here you have a Premier who has been saying loudly since she was elected, and even before she was elected, that we need pipelines, we need natural gas pipelines, we need oil pipelines, we need to get our product to market, and we need foreign investors to come in here to Alberta to invest in them. What is she doing? She wants to hold a referendum so that foreign investors will say, you know what, I think I'll wait before I put any money in here, because, you know, capital does not like disruption. They do not like uncertainty. And now she's created uncertainty. I mean, I'm sure the Prime Minister privately must be pulling out his hair out of his head, like, what is going on with this? You know, look, I have great faith in Albertans. They're patriotic people. They're not going to vote to separate from Canada. There's a group of about 20% who are MAGA separatists, I guess, independentists, and they're the ones that she's playing footsie with, which is crazy. I mean, she should be telling these people, go and form your own separatist party, run an election. If you get elected, you can put a referendum. But why is she aiding and abetting this? It's madness.
So,
Thank God this guy is retiring. Seriously? Like, he is delusional. He says the Prime Minister must be pulling his hair out because she's playing footsies with these MAGA people. She's blocking investment. Dude, That is the Liberal government's fault. The Liberals have been blocking investment in oil and gas in Alberta for years, for 10 years. If there is no investment in Alberta, it is not because of the separatists. It is not because of Danielle Smith. Look at all of these CEOs of major oil and gas companies saying that the Liberal policies are to blame. Mark Carney could fix this immediately, right away. He could cancel the tanker ban, which is so stupid to begin with. Everybody else is allowed to use those waters, but not for Canadian energy because the reefs, the planet. Come on, like, give me a break. They'll never blame the Liberals. They blame Danielle Smith, who is actually standing up and respecting democracy.
Do you think that the Prime Minister, I think the last time we spoke, Tom, you were thinking the Prime Minister would kind of wait a while before wading in as directly. What do you think about what he said today?
I was pleasantly surprised to see Prime Minister Carney move in so strongly today. I think that type of clarity is exactly what's required here. And you know, I've been through 2 referenda. I was there working hard as a volunteer in the 1980 referendum against the separation of Quebec from Canada, and I did the same thing again in 95. And anybody who thinks that this is just the 10th referendum question on top of 9 other things that Alberta is going to be asking their citizens on October 19th doesn't understand what's at play here. This is something that goes to the heart of the economy of Alberta and of Canada. This is absolutely the last thing we need now because it provides more instability, more uncertainty for markets, for big decisions on, I don't know, whether we get involved in building a new pipeline. That might cost tens of billions of dollars. And it's the very frivolousness with which it's being simply launched, saying, well, this is a way to settle the whole thing. We'll ask whether they want to stay in Canada, and if not, we'll ask whether they want to have a referendum to leave Canada in accordance with the Constitution. First of all, the question in and of itself with that 2-headed beast that they've got doesn't make any sense. That's anything but clarity. And so if the whole exercise is about getting things cleared up, it's a failure. And I do think it's transparent that this exercise has very little to do with Alberta's place in Canada and everything to do with Danielle Smith's place as leader of the United Conservative Party of Alberta. This is about saving Private Smith. All of this is an exercise to help someone whose career has been about recrimination and grievance. All of a sudden, the worst happened. A Prime Minister of Canada saying, I'm with you. Let's sign a memorandum of agreement. I agree with you on the tax. I agree with you on pipelines. What's she got left? How's she supposed to answer the grieving people who she's created into a separatist mess? She's going to tell them, well, we can decide to separate if you want. This is not frivolous. This is the threat to break apart our country, one of the most successful countries in the world, and in my view, the best country in the world, because a provincial politician thinks it's the best way for her to save her own neck. I'm not buying any of it.
This is like the worst take. He's saying that it's all Danielle Smith's fault, that she's trying to break up the country, and that's not okay because Alberta pays the bills, everybody. We rely on Alberta because of their oil and gas. It goes to the heart of the economy of Canada. It's the last thing that Canada needs. More instability for markets, pipelines, again, it's the failed Liberal anti-energy policies which have caused the separatist movement in Alberta. It is the Liberals at fault. Carney, instead of making this MOU, which will never happen, we all know that he doesn't want a pipeline, he's the one playing footsies with Danielle, but basically playing her, and Albertans see it. They see that they're getting played. But they almost never ask why people are angry in the first place. You don't rebuild national unity by lecturing people nonstop about them being far right and their views being far right. These people are scared. The media and the Liberals are scared, and that's why they're telling Albertans that their voices shouldn't be heard. Tom Mulcair here saying that Alberta's the heart of our economy. Right. So let me get this straight here. You want Canada to be able to rely on them to pay for everything because they're the heart of the economy, but you are literally blocking their prosperity. The Liberals are blocking their prosperity, and you're okay with it. And the separatists are like, hey, if we were a country, we wouldn't have these stupid laws, and the investors would probably be like hoping that Alberta separates so that they can finally do business with Alberta. Because right now, nobody is investing, not because of Danielle Smith, not because of the separatist movement, but because of the Liberals, the woke, liberal, anti-energy policies. And poor Danielle Smith for having to deal with a bunch of moronic net zero nutcases. Oh, we're gonna block you, but we're not going to let you vote to separate because we need you because you're the heart of our economy. But to everybody else, we don't like pipelines. We don't like Alberta's oil and gas. They're dirty and all that kind of stuff. And net zero. We love net zero, but we're going to work with Alberta. Like, they're getting played and they know it. The second Danielle Smith started talking referendum, half of the political class reacted like she launched an invasion onto Ottawa. And the criticisms basically fall into three categories. The first one is that she's legitimizing separatists. This is the big one, right? That she's opening the door to extremism, that she's empowering fringe movements. Well, that fringe movement is growing because you mock them, you laugh at them, and you shame them, and you're telling them that they can't have opinions, or the opinions that they have, that they're not for Canada. No, it's not that they're not for Canada. They're just done with the Liberals who have not been listening to them for 11 years. Why would they want to stay in a country that is like actively trying to push their industries down and blocking prosperity and their biggest industry? What the media is really upset about is that regular people of Alberta are discussing ideas that they don't approve of, that the Liberals don't approve of. That's why it's like wall-to-wall coverage of this whole situation. They don't want them talking about Alberta separation because they don't like it. Because for years, Western alienation was supposed to stay in the background. People were allowed to complain, but quietly. They had to be quiet about it. They were allowed to grumble at the hockey games and the coffee shops, amongst themselves, but they were not supposed to organize politically in a serious way. They were just hicks, right? People look at Alberta like they're lesser than the rest of the country. And now that this movement is like snowballing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, that's what's freaking them out. And they didn't pay attention for years and thought, separatists, what's separatists? They're fringe. Well, if they're so fringe, why are you running it through the media nonstop, bashing Danielle Smith and blaming them and shaming them? And honestly, the media reaction has been completely hilarious. You'd think that Danielle Smith personally drove to Parliament Hill with a Republic of Alberta flag duct taped to her pickup truck. Every panel discussion suddenly turns into democracy. Is democracy itself under attack? It's been under attack, okay? The fact that they don't want Danielle Smith to put forward this question on a question of a referendum is like, is she displaying democracy? People are angry, okay? The people that she represents are angry. And maybe you don't agree with it. Maybe the mainstream media doesn't like it, but angry people vote. Now, here's the part that the left and the mainstream media never want to admit. You do not make separatist sentiment disappear by banning conversations about it. You don't reduce alienation by calling people stupid, extremists every 5 minutes, or MAGA, or far right. Just look at what happened to the Freedom Convoy. Just look at what happened. We were shut down. The Conservatives were shut down, called names. This is exactly the same thing that's happening all over again. And shaming them makes it worse. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen. Every time Ottawa dismisses Alberta's concerns, separatist sentiment grows just a little bit more every single time. The second criticism of Danielle Smith is that she's dividing the country, because apparently Canada was perfectly united right up until 5 minutes ago. Apparently there was no regional resentment, no energy battles, no equalization anger, no pipeline wars, no federal provincial tension, no conservative liberal tension. Everything was sunshine and rainbows and maple syrup until Danielle Smith just ruined it. It's all her fault. Come on. The division already existed. She didn't create it. She inherited it. Now they're having a hissy fit saying that this creates instability, investor uncertainty. It's all because of her, right? It's Alberta's fault and these far-right MAGA separatists, and Danielle Smith is playing footsies with them, and it's all their fault that investors don't want to invest in Canada. She's causing constitutional chaos. Alberta has spent years watching major energy projects get delayed, blocked, regulated into complete oblivion, or buried under environmental review processes that somehow just never end. Like, what's the point of even investing in Alberta? And then the media acts shocked when people become cynical or angry. And at a certain point, people stop believing the system is working fairly because it's not working fairly. And that's the issue. It's trust. It's not just division, it's trust. People feel like the rules are different depending on which province you live in, and they are. I mean, just look at the Marilyn Gladges situation, The Liberals say, well, if you want funding, you're going to have to become liberal, Oh, too bad that you didn't vote liberal. You're not going to have your funding. Like, just look at the Marilyn Gladges situation. And honestly, some of the elite panic sounds completely tone deaf, because average Albertans are sitting there saying, okay, but what about our economy? Like, what about our jobs? What about our industries? And instead of addressing those questions seriously, the response is, stop complaining, you extremist, you far-right maple MAGA. Great strategy. I'm sure that'll calm everybody down immediately, It's the worst strategy ever. The third criticism of Danielle Smith is that Indigenous treaties make this impossible, saying separation is legally impossible because of Indigenous treaty obligations and consultation requirements. The majority of Natives, by the way, want a pipeline. It's just the corrupt chiefs being bribed by anti-energy activist groups to block pipelines in Canada. Now, you can say that separation would be difficult, and yeah, that's true. You can say that there are constitutional barriers. That's true. But that does not answer the underlying political problem. People are still feeling ignored. People are still feeling economically targeted. People still feel Ottawa only pays attention when Alberta becomes politically inconvenient, which is exactly what's happening now, because look at what's happening. The second separatist pressure started rising. Suddenly, out of the blue, Mark Carney wants meetings. Suddenly there's a pipeline discussion. Suddenly Alberta energy matters again. Suddenly everybody in Ottawa discovers Western Canada actually exists. But it's all BS, right? We all know that a pipeline will never get built, but suddenly Carney wants to look like he's going to listen to Alberta because of this separatist movement. Funny how that works, right? Funny how Alberta suddenly matters once separatist pressure starts rising. So what, Ottawa only negotiates when pressure becomes politically dangerous for them?
Conservatives love Canada. I love Canada. We're going to fight for a united Canada every day in every way. We're going to reach out to Albertans in every corner of the province to make the case for our wonderful country. And we're going to do it through hope. We want Albertans to understand that they can have an even better future in our country, a country where their resources are unblocked, where their legitimate property, including their firearms, are respected, where their streets are once again safe with criminals locked up, where free enterprise allows them to start businesses and achieve great things, where their provincial government has all of the same powers that the Quebec government has, so that Albertans can feel that they are in charge of their own destiny within Canada. That's the hopeful, optimistic vision that we have for a stronger Alberta within a united Canada.
There are a lot of conservatives in this country who feel completely hopeless about the country, who feel like the Liberals are not listening to us, that Canada is gone. That's why there are so many people leaving, not just Albertan conservatives, but a lot of conservatives across the country feel like after the last election, hope in Canada is lost, that we cannot get our country back. And Poilievre and Smith both understand something that the Liberals just don't get. You cannot spend years telling people that your industry is dirty, that your province is selfish, that your concerns are illegitimate, that your frustrations are dangerous, and then act shocked when alienation grows and people stop, like, having hope in Canada. Instead of asking, how do we rebuild trust with Alberta, the Liberals, what they do is they say, how do we shame Alberta voters into compliance? That's not unity. That's arrogance. And the more that attitude continues, the more political space Danielle Smith and people like her are going to gain. What do you expect from conservative leaders? They're not sowing division. They're being clear that they want a strong Alberta within a united Canada, but they also want to be heard. They want conservatives to be heard, actually heard, which is exactly what is not happening. Now let's listen to Mark Carney and what he has to say about this whole thing.
Is it helpful to ask these fundamental questions? No, it's not helpful. Of course it's not. Is it the democratic will of Albertans? Did they vote for this in the last provincial election? No, they didn't. It wasn't on the ballot paper. It wasn't in the mandates of or platforms of any of or of the governing party. And the official opposition. It is what it is.
You know what Canadians also didn't vote for in the last general election? For a majority government. But look what we have now, a majority government. And this is not helpful either. So he has nothing to say, okay? Anyways, here is where the story gets really interesting, because up until now, the media narrative has basically been Danielle Smith is bad, this is not okay, Alberta's angry for no reason, national unity crisis, everybody panic. But underneath all of that, the media just doesn't want to cover something. And I think that this is why they're inflaming the Alberta situation, to put pressure on yet another conservative. But underneath, there is a massive political problem brewing inside the Liberal Party itself, and the Liberal media does not want to talk about it. And honestly, you have to almost admire how impossible this situation is for Carney. He is trying to play both sides of the energy debate at the exact same time. He wants Alberta voters to believe that, hey, we support energy now. All of a sudden, yeah, right. We know that he doesn't support it unless he can make money off of it, but at the same time that he's pretending to support Alberta and what they want, he's also wanting downtown Toronto climate activists to believe, no, don't worry, we still hate pipelines. Like, it's absolutely incredible that people take the Liberal government seriously. The media isn't talking about it, but Liberal activists, they're not happy with Carney. Now, recently, Carney started making nice with Alberta, pretending to be nice with them, having energy cooperation, pipeline discussions, economic agreements, MOUs. Meanwhile, nothing is actually going on. Nothing is actually getting done. And suddenly, Ottawa and the Liberals discovered that Alberta actually exists because they're richer with Alberta. Amazing timing, by the way. Now, all of a sudden, guys, national unity matters. Oh, now it matters. And here's the best part. The second that Carney starts moving towards Alberta energy cooperation, or pretending like he's moving towards Alberta cooperation, his own Liberal MPs start panicking and having a huge meltdown. Reports come out that 14 Liberal MPs wrote a letter to the Prime Minister objecting to environmental concessions and pipeline direction. They want all the benefits of a resource economy without actually supporting the resource economy. They want cheap energy, high-paying jobs, economic growth, strong exports, government revenue, but they do not like this pipeline deal. You can only run the contradiction for so long before reality shows up with a baseball bat, and now reality is here because Carney is trapped. Completely trapped. He wants to work with Alberta, so he says he wants economic growth, energy expansion, national unity, that Alberta matters, but at the same time he wants climate credibility and doubling the grid. Like, sorry, those things do not fit together anymore. And at some point he has to pick a side. And it's so funny because if this was the Conservatives, if 14 Conservative MPs had signed a letter to Pierre Poilievre saying that they are unhappy with his choices, there would be wall-to-wall coverage on every single mainstream media channel. They would be putting it everywhere, all over CTV, every single panel, CBC, all of that, talking about his leadership, talking about how the party is fractured. Meanwhile, this happens to Liberals, and we barely hear a peep from the media about it. I'm sure that there's a lot of Liberals who don't even know that this has happened. Instead, they're blasting Danielle Smith on repeat over and over and over, blaming her for their Liberal policies. Alberta is not interested in Carney's symbolic nonsense that goes absolutely nowhere anymore. Approve projects, build pipelines, stop strangling development with regulation written by people who think that electricity does not come with a price tag or who are not affected by the price tag. Show them your appreciation with action, not just with another announcement, with word salad, but with actual action. The Liberal approach to energy for the last decade has basically been, we oppose your industry morally, but please continue funding the country. That's not sustainable politics. That's ideological fantasy. And now the Liberal coalition is starting to crack right down the middle. The real story is that the federal Liberal coalition no longer makes sense. The media, they should be talking about this instead of Danielle Smith on repeat. Mark Carney is trying to appeal to Conservatives without actually doing anything. He wants to look like the pipeline guy without actually ever getting a pipeline built in this country, and then blaming everybody else for not getting a pipeline built. People in this country are broke, the economy is weak, young people can't buy homes, affordability is through the roof, investment is leaving, productivity is collapsing. Why the hell are people still voting for this party? It is absolutely unreal to me. But they'll blame everybody else except themselves. They never take responsibility for their failures. Liberals spent years telling Canadians that oil and gas are the past, pipelines are evil, resource workers are the problems, and Alberta just needs to transition. But transition to what? EVs? Electricity? Like we're going to be a superpower in electricity? Please. Meanwhile, the United States is producing energy, the Middle East is producing energy, China is building coal-fired plants, India is buying oil. The whole world runs on oil. I don't understand what the Liberals don't get. Canada lectures the world while sitting on massive natural resources that we refuse to develop. Brilliant strategy, absolutely brilliant. And now the consequences are arriving at our doorstep, because this is not just an Alberta story anymore. This is a national political realignment happening right now. The old Liberal coalition is cracking apart. The media is covering for them. And honestly, this was inevitable. These people do not do smart policies. They're great at politics, but they suck at running the country. You cannot permanently hold together urban climate activists, oil workers, government bureaucrats, resource provinces, and radical environmentalists. These things do not go together. You cannot run a country promising things to everybody and getting nothing done. Eventually, you're going to run into reality. Those interests fundamentally conflict with each other, especially once the economy gets rough, especially once affordability collapses. Like, people just have to start realizing that the Conservative approach is the only approach. It's the only thing that truly makes sense for this country. The disconnect between elites like the Liberals and Mark Carney and ordinary Canadians is becoming impossible for regular Canadians to ignore, because we're the ones that have to pay the bill. People look around and see, housing costs are exploding, food prices are exploding, crime rates are rising, tent cities are growing, economic growth is slowing, while politicians in Ottawa argue about pronouns and emissions targets. Who cares? Who cares? At a certain point, people have to stop taking these people seriously. Alberta is just the sharpest example of it right now. Conservatives just want a Canada that actually represents the industries and provinces paying a huge share of the bills. That's not extremism, that's just common sense. And the longer Ottawa and the Liberals and Mark Carney refuse to understand that, the more alienation grows. Simple. And at the end of the day, Danielle Smith didn't invent Western alienation, she inherited it. The Liberal government spent years creating the conditions for this frustration to bloom. Years attacking pipelines, years demonizing oil and gas, years treating Alberta like an inconvenience, years prioritizing activist approval over economic reality, and now suddenly everybody in Ottawa is shocked that people are angry. Really? What did they think was going to happen? And now Mark Carney has inherited a political disaster. Because if he actually wants national unity, he's going to have to make a choice eventually. Does he keep appeasing the activist wing of the Liberal Party and the activist voters, or does he rebuild a relationship with Alberta and the Canadian energy sector? But we all know that that's not what he wants because he's net zero. Pretending you can do both forever is just fantasy. And honestly, we are getting tired of fantasy. We want reality. We want affordability. We want jobs. We want growth. We want energy security. We want competence. We do not want to be lectured about the climate from people who think that pipelines are more dangerous than economic collapse. And the longer that the Liberals dismiss ordinary frustration as extremism, the stronger that these movements are going to become. That should be all for today, everybody. I will see you the next time, possibly on Wednesday or Thursday. And I hope that you have a beautiful Tuesday afternoon and have a good day. Bye.